Welcome to Star Explainer. Tales of Herding Gods Part 394 explains based on novel. So let's start explanation. The remaining consciousness of the Grand Emperor backed off and disappeared, leaving behind only a cold humph. Qin Mu didn't mind that. It was the Grand Emperor, after all. His consciousness was the strongest and the best. To be able to capture a part of it was good enough. The consciousness of a god was thoughts and consciousness, and it contained memories. His end goal was to obtain the cultivation technique needed to cultivate the grand overarching supreme consciousness. He was unable to completely refine the Grand Emperor, and thus had only a part of the Grand Emperor's consciousness. It would be extremely lucky for him if he were able to obtain the cultivation technique of the grand overarching supreme consciousness from refining this part of the Grand Emperor's consciousness. The luring out of the Grand Emperor's consciousness from the imperial seal and the sacrificial altar could be considered a crisis for him. However, there were opportunities on top of danger in crises, and one could take hold of that opportunity after surviving the danger. This was what a wise man should think about and do. A lot of people only saw the danger and would avoid it when facing crises. They forget crises were two-sided. When one avoided the danger, they missed out on opportunities. Qin Mu and the others forced back the Grand Emperor and captured part of his consciousness. That was seizing the opportunity in a moment of crisis. After seeing his consciousness back away, Luo Wushuang and Yu Tingde both flew out of his divine treasure. Qin Mu thanked the two of them as Shujun returned to the grand primordium divine stone. Qin Mu's consciousness descended on him and thanked him too. Things related to your life and death also concern me. There's no need to thank me. In Shujun's head, the two eyes were jumping around in their sockets as he smiled and suggested, "If you feel bad, offer me more consciousness, essence, and blood so that I can recover my ears, mouth, and nose." Qin Mu laughed heartily. "Relax, King Jun. I will grant your wish." Shu Jun coldly smiled. "What King Jun? Although I was one of the three kings of the primordial era, my people didn't call me King Jun, they called me Divine King Shu Jun. You should call me Divine King too. Although you nabbed a part of the Grand Emperor's consciousness, you don't know how to refine it and obtain its memories. Offer me more essence, blood, and consciousness so that I can recover my head and teach you. This deal is fair, right?" Qin Mu frowned and proposed, "How about you teach me how to refine the Grand Emperor's consciousness, then I'll impart the knowledge within to you. Don't you want the Grand Emperor's grand overarching supreme consciousness? Isn't this deal better?" Shu Jun's heart moved, and he thought about it before saying, "This isn't a bad proposal. My three enclosures' higher knowledge is strong, but it pales in comparison to the Grand Emperor's grand overarching supreme consciousness. However, the Grand Emperor didn't get to where he was simply because of it. He also had the visualization of countless people, which helped his cultivation." Qin Mu tried to persuade him, saying, "If the Grand Emperor's consciousness contains the grand overarching supreme consciousness, I will impart it to you without any reservations. After Divine King Shujun is revived, with the grand overarching supreme consciousness, it's likely that you will be the next Grand Emperor." Shujun smiled. "All right, it's a promise. I promise." Shujun was very happy. This fellow feels refreshed for once. He, the Grand Emperor's grand overarching supreme consciousness, is way better than my three enclosures' higher knowledge. This fellow doesn't know that he suffered a great loss from the deal. Wait a moment. His two eyeballs blinked, and he suddenly realized another plan. If my brain was recovered, I could occupy his corporeal body and eradicate his consciousness. Then, I could refine the Grand Emperor. Wouldn't that be better? If I impart the refining method to him, even if the imprisoned consciousness has the grand overarching supreme consciousness within it, I have no brain and won't be able to cultivate it. I suffered a great loss. The head on the sacrificial altar was angry as hell, and the two eyeballs jumped around as he called out, "How dare you toy with me, a divine king? I'll kill you, I'll kill you." Qin Mu smiled. Is divine King Shujun, one of the three primordial kings, going to go back on his words? After a while, Shujun finally calmed down and kept his promise, imparting the technique for refining a consciousness to obtain its memories to Qin Mu. However, he wasn't happy about it. Rising heaven creation of knowledge. The technique he imparted to Qin Mu was a type of consciousness divine art named Rising Heaven Creation of Knowledge. After learning it, he immediately went to modify it. Shujun was used to it. Qin Mu had always modified whatever he learned from him. He couldn't raise any objections at all. After he finished modifying it, he immediately went to refine the Grand Emperor's consciousness. Rising Heaven Creation of Knowledge was a divine art in the three enclosures higher knowledge technique that required relocating the 72 constellations and 328 star gods. The 328 star gods would rise to the heavens and shift the stars around to allow the stars in the constellations to orbit in an irregular manner. Every time it moved, it would create a strong refining force that would refine the enemy's consciousness and make it one's own. The memory in the opponent's consciousness would be refined and made into information that would enter one's brain. However, it didn't change one's thoughts, which made it similar to providing nutrients for one's consciousness. This allowed one to avoid being assimilated by the opposing consciousness, while allowing them to refine it and raise their own cultivation in consciousness. Rising Heaven Creation of Knowledge was a divine art the prehistoric masters of creation made against the other masters of creation. There were frequent battles between them. Hence, ways of defeating one's enemies became the prime research focus of that era's masters of creation. Of course, that era's divine arts were way different from today's, rendering it alien territory for Qin Mu. Within the spirit embryo divine treasure, he utilized Rising Heaven Creation of Knowledge to refine the Grand Emperor's consciousness trapped in the heavenly bottle. A bunch of chaotically arranged and mixed information bombarded Qin Mu's brain with all sorts of images. It was the Grand Emperor's memories. He immediately went to separate the wheat from the chaff in search of useful things in the Grand Emperor's memories, annihilating things he deems useless as he went. There were too many things in the Grand Emperor's consciousness. Memories from the primordial era alone made up countless pieces of information. Qin Mu frowned. Amongst the memories, there was little about the grand overarching supreme consciousness. However, there were many parts regarding consciousness divine arts, though they were just parts and not complete divine arts. The strength of his consciousness, however, was rising rapidly. The rate of his increase in strength was way faster than when he cultivated the three enclosures higher knowledge. When the Grand Emperor's consciousness in the heavenly bottle was almost fully refined, he had still only obtained a few simple techniques on the grand overarching supreme consciousness. He refused to give up and refined the remaining portion of the Grand Emperor's consciousness, which allowed him to grow stronger. This time, more memories regarding the grand overarching supreme consciousness came up. Qin Mu gave a sigh of relief and immediately went to arrange the information in an attempt to find the techniques for the grand overarching supreme consciousness. The difference between the grand overarching supreme consciousness and the three enclosures higher knowledge was in visualization. The three enclosures higher knowledge visualized the 78 constellations and 328 star gods, while the grand overarching supreme consciousness visualized at most 365 constellations and nearly 2,000 star gods. There were so many star gods that it even exceeded the knowledge Qin Mu had on them. Currently, there were only 360 star gods in the celestial heavens, yet there were nearly 2,000 of them in the grand overarching supreme consciousness. What was that supposed to mean? Are there so many ancient gods in this world? Where did those in the grand, overarching supreme consciousness go? Qin Mu thought about it in silence. The current number of ancient gods was far less than the recorded number in the grand, overarching supreme consciousness. Was there a possibility that there were 2,000 ancient gods in the world at a point in time? Most of these ancient gods are dead. Qin Mu stopped thinking about it and continued arranging the grand, overarching supreme consciousness. Outside of the number of star gods, its visualization technique was also better than that of the three enclosures higher knowledge. The three enclosures higher knowledge visualized by placing the Supreme Palace enclosure higher knowledge, Purple Forbidden enclosure higher knowledge, and Heavenly Market enclosure higher knowledge in the Grand Primordium Origin Stone, or Grand Primordium Divine Stone. Meanwhile, the Grand Overarching Supreme Consciousness visualization technique involved spreading it across the corporeal body and turning a person into a universe. By cultivating this technique, a god would reside in every corner of one's corporeal body. In the heart of the brows, there were the various purple forbidden gods and celestial emperor. In one sea of Qi lay the two gods of the ruins of End. In one's Dantian lay Mother Earth, while Earth Count lay in one's Yongquan. In the tip of one's backbone lay the 33 star gods. No wonder Shu Jun praised the Grand Emperor, and said that he had the strongest corporeal body in history. One has to have a strong corporeal body for this cultivation technique. It's just that I don't know whose corporeal body would be stronger, the ancient celestial emperors, or the Grand Emperors. The Grand Emperor's consciousness in the spirit embryo divine treasure was completely refined. It was then that he realized that the Grand Overarching Supreme Consciousness was different than the Masters of Creation's techniques that he imagined, making Qin Mu frown. The Grand Emperor's Grand Overarching Supreme Consciousness was actually a technique for the Divine Treasure Cultivation System and the Celestial Palace Cultivation System. The Grand Overarching Supreme Consciousness he obtained was incomplete and lacked the technique for the 7 stars Divine Treasure and Celestial Being Divine Treasure. In addition, it lacked techniques for cultivation after the Jade Capital Realm. The Grand Emperor modified the technique. Qin Mu's head figuratively exploded, and he had the feeling of missing a punch that he put every ounce of his effort into. If this was the original Grand Overarching Supreme Consciousness, he could still fuse it with the Spirit Embryo Divine Treasure in accordance with the original technique to perfect it and make it suitable for him. However, it wouldn't be that useful after the Grand Emperor combined it with the Divine Treasure Cultivation System and the Celestial Palace Cultivation System. This was because he only had a Spirit Embryo Divine Treasure, not even having a Celestial Palace. The usefulness of this technique was greatly reduced for him. He imparted what he knew of the Grand Overarching Supreme Consciousness, stunning Shu Jun. Nevertheless, he learned it seriously. Qin Mu was perplexed and asked, Divine King Shu Jun, as one of the 3 primordial kings, why do you still learn the Divine Treasure Cultivation System? After modification, the Grand Overarching Supreme Consciousness isn't that useful to me, and it's useless for you. Rat, do you think I still want to go the way of visualization with consciousness after I resurrect? Shu Jun shook his head, and 2 eyeballs flew out of their sockets, jumping around. One of them said, if I continue with the path of visualization with consciousness, I will be going against 1,000,000 years worth of knowledge and research alone. Ultimately, I'd be eliminated by time like the other masters of creation, causing my species to go extinct. The other eye smiled. After I resurrect, I'll learn your cultivation techniques and fuse them with the masters of creation's visualization and consciousness technique. Thus, even with an incomplete Grand Overarching Supreme Consciousness, my accomplishments won't pale in comparison to the Grand Emperor's. Qin Mu was stunned. Shu Jun's 2 eyes utilized their consciousness, which evolved repeatedly, calculating the marvels of the Grand Overarching Supreme Consciousness. He continued, I entered your divine treasure and found that it doesn't match with the Grand Emperor's technique. You lack a lot of divine treasures. You probably chose a unique path of cultivation, which you are now stuck on with no way out. You don't know how to continue. Qin Mu nodded. Shu Jun pointed out his weak points. He opened the spirit embryo divine treasure, and used it to evolve the prehistoric times of the universe. However, there was a limit to it. He had already used up the spirit embryo divine treasure's potential. Later on, he was only able to barely activate its power with the primordial liquid he got from Mother Earth. However, the spirit embryo divine treasure's potential had already been reached. Recently, he felt that his power had already reached the limit set by the spirit embryo divine treasure. His vital qi cultivation reached the level of true gods, but it also reached the limit of the spirit embryo divine treasure. Thus he worked hard on his consciousness to make up for his flaws and attempt to get out of his current predicament. He never thought clearly about how to continue. He wanted to open a new path based on the spirit embryo divine treasure. However, to where and in which direction, he wasn't clear. While he was fumbling around, he felt that the end of that path could be a marvelous realm that flowed together with the Tao. It was something that words couldn't describe. Shu Jun said, "If I were you, I would open the Celestial Palace." Qin Mu humbly asked for guidance, bowing down and saying, "Please guide me, Divine King." Shu Jun raised his eyelids one after another. He was puzzled over Qin Mu's rare modesty. He said calmly, "If you create a new path, one that is totally different from the Celestial Palace, this means that you have completely forsaken the divine arts practitioner's million years of wisdom, abandoning the experience accumulated by others. The countless techniques and divine arts over the last million years will be useless to you. You will establish a completely new civilization through your own strength." This was precisely the idea in Qin Mu's head. In his view, although the Celestial Palace system hadn't yet evolved to a perfect celestial heaven, there was nothing stopping it from changing. He really wanted to abandon the cultivation system of the Celestial Palace and create a new cultivation system. However, have you thought of how much time you would need? Shu Jun said, "You may need 1,000,000 years to perfect the new path you created, so as to let this cultivation system reach a matured stage. Also, you are doing this alone, so 1,000,000 years is a conservative estimate. However, if you accept the Celestial Palace system, maybe you would only need a few thousand years, or even a few hundred years, to reach the pinnacle, becoming the strongest existence under the sky. I'm speaking from experience. It's up to you how you want to walk this path." Qin Mu fell into silence as he bowed towards Shu Jun, who was on the sacrificial altar, expressing his thanks. He then turned into a wisp of consciousness that dissipated. Shu Jun was perplexed. Why is this little fellow so respectful towards me? On the Grand Emperor's sacrificial altar, Qin Mu raised his head to take a look. The Grand Emperor's seal hung in the air above the altar, borrowing the Grand Emperor's power to resist the growing strength of the Supreme Consciousness realm. Yu Tinga and Luo Wushuang turned their heads. The rotational speed of the ring of stars on the cliff seemed to be back to normal and hadn't speed up. They heaved sighs of relief. The sacrificial altar flew in the air, moving towards the Grand Emperor's corporeal body, closing in on the heart of his brows and celestial Venerable Hua. Except, Qin Mu had been looking at the Grand Emperor's seal, seemingly in a daze. Yu Tinga and Luo Wushuang were both puzzled but didn't say anything. Suddenly, 2 streams of tears rolled down the corners of Qin Mu's eyes. Yu Tinga and Luo Wushuang got a fright. They had no idea why this celestial Venerable Mu became so melancholy and moody all of a sudden. Qin Mu retracted his gaze. There was a sense of sadness gushing into his heart, making him unable to stop himself from tearing up. He had decided not to explore the path that wasn't trodden before, not to find out where it would lead to and discover the wonders at the end of it. In the past, he could faintly see that this path contained limitless beauty. Now, he could only abandon it. He planned to reopen the celestial palace, relying on the wisdom of 1,000,000 years to continue down the path of the realms of honored God, true God, Jade Pavilion, Jade Capital, and the rest. Or perhaps he could wait 1,000,000 years to perfect his path and become an eternal legend, surpassing the celestial heavens realm. But eternal peace, the reform, his friends, and people with the same ideals couldn't afford to wait. He may miss out on the countless beautiful scenery of the other path, and have no chance of seeing the end of the great Tao and its new beginning, but he could seize the present and cherish what he had in front of him. When he let all of this go, the seed in his heart also gradually disappeared, transforming into a wisp of melancholy that lingered on. This melancholy wasn't sorrow from his heart, it was sorrow that traveled from the end of the great Tao. The Grand Emperor's sacrificial altar quietly floated past Celestial Venerable Hua, as it moved towards the heart of the Grand Emperor's brows. Luo Wushuang turned and looked at Celestial Venerable Hua, whom they left behind. He couldn't help but say, "Overlord Body Qin, you are avoiding Celestial Venerable Hua. Shouldn't we rescue him first?" Yu Tinga also noticed this. Qin Mu was clearly planning to skirt around Celestial Venerable Hua, who was struggling to move forward, therefore reaching the heart of the Grand Emperor's brows before him. Qin Mu laughed. "Don't worry, Celestial Venerable Hua will survive. Am I right, Celestial Venerable Hua?" Celestial Venerable Hua paid no attention to their words. He remained frozen in place, the runes of great Tao around his body still slowly changing. "He has no opinions," Qin Mu said. The corners of Luo Wushuang's eyes twitched twice, as he turned his head to look at Celestial Venerable Hua. Qin Mu consoled him by saying, "Don't worry. It may be very difficult for Celestial Venerable Hua to come here, but going out is easy. All he needs to do is turn around. In a few 100 years' time, he'll be out of here." Luo Wushuang was speechless with anger. "Celestial Venerable Mu, could it be that you are worried that after you save Celestial Venerable Hua, he will repay your kindness with enmity and kill you?" Qin Mu plainly said, "I'm not sure whether he will kill me or not. However, he will definitely kill Heavenly Master Yu Tinga." "Heavenly Master Yu, am I correct?" Yu Tinga sighed, looking dispirited. "I tricked him and Celestial Venerable Shu here, causing him to be trapped in the Supreme Consciousness realm for so long. Most likely, he will kill me." The sacrificial altar flew wobbly into the heart of the Grand Emperor's brows. There was no grand primordium origin stone in the heart of his brows, only a hexagon-shaped wound. It was an extremely huge and vast place. Dazzling brilliance surged forth from the depths of the Grand Emperor's head, looking like a myriad of clouds tinged with sunset hues. The Grand Emperor's sacrificial altar flew among the abundant multicolored rays. The seal was continuously absorbing the rays as they surged forward. They could vaguely see a figure sitting within the overlapping multicolored rays. Yu Tinga and Luo Wushuang had doubts in their hearts as they looked at Qin Mu. Qin Mu suppressed the agitation in his heart and took a deep breath. He said solemnly, "Heavenly Master Yu, Divine Knife Luo, are you able to move the corporeal body of a Celestial Venerable?" Their hearts trembled violently as they stared at the unmoving figure within the light rays with disbelief. The Grand Emperor's sacrificial altar finally came to the side of that figure. Luo Wushuang examined the man. He had a graceful bearing with an extraordinary air around him, looking like a middle-aged emperor, but being extremely handsome. However, Luo Wushuang couldn't recognize him. He thought to himself, which high emperor is this? But from Overlord Body Qin's words, he should be a Celestial Venerable. Exactly which Celestial Venerable died here? Yu Tinga's heart shook violently as he whispered, "He is Celestial Venerable Yun." Luo Wushuang's mind was blown after he heard those words. He cried, "He is the founder of the Divine Bridge Divine Treasure, Celestial Venerable Yun." Qin Mu hurried them. Gentlemen, I'm unable to move him with my magic power. It's better for you to do it. The Grand Emperor's sacrificial altar floated in front of Celestial Venerable Yun's corporeal body. Qin Mu said softly, "Dao friend Yun, time to go home." Yu Tinga and Luo Wushuang suppressed the trembling in their hearts and moved forward to execute their magic powers. They raised Celestial Venerable Yun's corporeal body, sending it onto the altar. Qin Mu inspected Celestial Venerable Yun's injuries. The strange thing was that Celestial Venerable Yun had no injuries on his body. However, his soul had disappeared without a trace. Celestial Venerable Yu said that Celestial Venerable Yun is already dead. In that case, it's really true. The good thing is, even if he's dead, I can bring him back to life. Qin Mu examined carefully, and didn't find any of the Grand Emperor's consciousness. He thought for a while and made his decision. Gentlemen, please send him into the heart of my brows. There is a piece of Yudu hidden within it. We shall hide his body there first. Yu Tinga and Luo Wushuang had plenty of doubts in their hearts, but they still complied with sending Celestial Venerable Yun's corporeal body into the heart of Qin Mu's brows, into the Qinward land. Qin Mu let out a long sigh of relief and mobilized the Grand Emperor's sacrificial altar for the return journey. The Grand Emperor's sacrificial altar went past Celestial Venerable Hua again. Luo Wushuang couldn't help but glance at Qin Mu, leaving Qin Mu no choice but to stop the altar. He said, "Why don't both of you turn him around?" Luo Wushuang smiled coldly. "What good does that do? He'll still be trapped in the Supreme Consciousness realm." Qin Mu said, "If he has to turn by himself, he would need another 200 years' time. If we help him, we could save him 200 years. Luo Wushuang frowned. Before he could say anything, Qin Mu interrupted, saying, "Divine Knife Luo, can you guarantee that Celestial Venerable Hua won't kill Heavenly Master Yu and me after he's free?" Luo Wushuang didn't answer, as he and Yu Tinga turned Celestial Venerable Hua around. The Grand Emperor's sacrificial altar continued to fly towards the outside. After a long time, the altar flew over the abyss of the void, arriving under the ring of stars. The three men and the dragon got off of the altar. After, Qin Mu put the altar away, only retaining the Grand Emperor's seal. He then looked doubtfully at the Divine Dragon. The Divine Dragon was quiet during the journey, quite unlike how it used to chatter non-stop. Suddenly, Yu Tinga's voice trembled. Celestial Venerable Hua made a step. Qin Mu got a fright and hurriedly glanced over. Indeed, Celestial Venerable Hua had made a step in their direction. Crap! His scalp went numb. He quickly charged towards the outside of the Supreme Consciousness realm as Luo Wushuang, Yu Tinga, and the Divine Dragon frantically followed him. The closer one was to the core of the Supreme Consciousness realm, the greater the suppression. But Celestial Venerable Hua only needed to make the first step. The speed of his next step would then be much quicker, because he was walking out. For every step he took, the suppression would weaken slightly. Given his abilities, he would break free within a short span of time. Qin Mu's scalp went numb as he dashed forward with all his might, trying to leave this place before that happened. Right at this moment, he heard footsteps. It sounded as though mountains were shattering as the ground split, shaking the sky and earth, causing the void to crumble. Qin Mu turned back and saw flames shooting up into the sky within the Supreme Consciousness realm. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps could be heard again. This time around, it was louder and clearer. The flames rose higher, burning the entire sky. "I'm done for. Celestial Venerable Hua is free." Qin Mu gritted his teeth as he dashed forward wildly. Yu Tinga overtook him with a swoosh, running off by himself as he shouted, "I don't want to die together with you. I'll make a move first. Celestial Venerable Mu, you'll help me hold up Celestial Venerable Hua." I'll burn some joss papers for you next year. Burn your ass. Qin Mu was incensed. He saw Yu Tinga transforming into a pile of cubes, tumbling forward rapidly and disappearing without a trace. Qin Mu charged forward with all his strength, but Luo Wushuang was faster and was ahead of him. Apparently, he had recovered well over the last few days, and could utilize the magic power of either the Jade Pool or Jade Capital Realm. Luo Wushuang, you were chatting incessantly about rescuing Celestial Venerable Hua, so why are you running away? Qin Mu asked angrily. Luo Wushuang hesitated a while and slowed down his footsteps. He felt terribly ashamed as he said, I was thinking, given your reputation, if Celestial Venerable Hua kills you, he will silence me as well, so as to prevent him from carrying the infamy of killing a Celestial Venerable. I forgot the meaning of loyalty. At this moment, that divine dragon unexpectedly overtook him. It shook its head and swayed its tail, gliding along with the wind at a speed much greater than Qin Mu. Qin Mu was feeling doubtful. This divine dragon was created by my visualization, so its abilities shouldn't surpass me. Oh no, it's the Grand Emperor. He has borrowed and occupied the body of this divine dragon that I created. Just as he made this realization, intense light from the flame suddenly shone on his back, heating him until his body became hot, as though it was going to burst into flames. Qin Mu froze, stopping his footsteps. He turned around and gave a forced smile. Celestial Venerable Hua, it has been a long time. Luo Wushuang had no choice but to stop as well. He turned around, his knife chi surging, waiting in anticipation. Celestial Venerable Hua flew up with a swoosh and leaped over them. He landed in front of that divine dragon and grabbed it with his hands. The divine dragon struggled, but failed to break free. It opened its mouth and laughed coldly. Celestial Venerable Hua, are you thinking of killing me? You are unable to. My consciousness is all over the Supreme Consciousness realm. I am immortal. With a whoosh, it burst into flames and was reduced to ashes in an instant. Qin Mu froze as Celestial Venerable Hua looked at him. Celestial Venerable Mu, we meet again. Celestial Venerable Hua was expressionless. Behind him, a ring of flames that looked like it was capable of burning everything rotated slowly. On the ring, tiny flames danced and leaped, periodically glowing and giving off extremely bright brilliance. It looked as though there were many suns within the fire that exploded out. When he saw Qin Mu, he was clearly agitated. Every time I see you, I recall how you walloped me at the Jade Pool, Celestial Venerable Hua said. Qin Mu replied with a serious expression, as the saying goes, from an exchange of blows, friendship grows. A lot of sworn friends for life or death were forged through the exchanges of blows. It's better that Celestial Venerable Yun's corporeal body is in your hands instead of mine. Thank you. Celestial Venerable Hua turned and left after saying this, his figure moving off into the distance. Qin Mu was stunned. He shouted, what are you thanking me for? Thank you for reviving Celestial Venerable Yu. Celestial Venerable Hua's voice came traveling back from afar. That year at the Jade Pool, I said that if you could find out who killed Celestial Venerable Yu, I would let go of my hatred for you. Not only were you able to achieve that, you even brought him back to life. Qin Mu waved his hand high up in the air. Celestial Venerable Hua, let's have a chat before you go. Celestial Venerable Hua's voice was getting further away. Whenever I see you, I'm disgusted and feel like beating you to death. You have to be wary of Celestial Venerable Shu. She is a dangerous person. Luo Wushuang's expression changed drastically, as his heart throbbed wildly. I seem to have heard things I shouldn't be hearing. I have no choice but to revolt now. Part 394 end here. Thank you for watching.